Hello, I am Mary, and this is the beginning of our Eat More Plants program. You already had a science lesson about climate change, and this is the art lesson that partners with that. And so for today, our art lesson is going to be a climate change doodle, and it is going to look like this. And just to review, what you learned in science is that in a healthy atmosphere, some of the heat from the sun comes in and stays in, and some of the heat from the sun bounces back out. In an unhealthy atmosphere like we have right now, there's a lot of greenhouse gases that when the heat from the sun comes in, the heat gets trapped because of the greenhouse gases. And so here you see rays coming in and staying in. So you're going to have two sides. You're going to have a healthy atmosphere side and an unhealthy atmosphere side. All right, so to get started, we need to talk about our supplies. You want to start with a square. So one 8.5 by 8.5 square of cardstock, but you can use regular paper too. That would work. And you need a pencil. You need a fine point felt tip pen. And you need some color pencils. So for the sun, you can use any warm color, like these three. And for the healthy side, you can use green or blue of the atmosphere. And for the unhealthy side of the atmosphere, you're going to use a black pencil, but draw very lightly. But we will get back to colors in a bit. So those are all the supplies you're going to need. So let's start out with our drawing. Actually, I forgot something. Before we dive into our drawing, what I want to talk about is the art techniques we're going to use for this project. So the first art technique we're going to use is inspiration. So let's talk about where you get these ideas. Some of them just pop into your head, your creative ideas, but one way to get inspiration is to look outward. Look out and see what you can see, and that gives you inspiration and ideas as well. So looking for inspiration is one art technique, and we're going to do that. I looked and was inspired by an artist named James Reesey, and we're going to look at some of his work for inspiration for our buildings. The second technique we're going to use is creating depth in our drawing by using foreground, midground, and background. And then the last technique we're going to use is called Zentangle, and that is when you take a repeating line or a repeating shape and create a pattern with it. So we're going to use those three techniques in this art project. All right, now let's get to drawing. So here we have our square that we're going to start out with, and we're going to do our atmosphere bubble. And the atmosphere bubble should come about, I don't know, about a quarter of the way down, the tallest point, and then you start from one of the sides and you arch up and over. And that is kind of a sad arch, so I'm going to fix it a little bit. There we go. So there's my atmosphere bubble. You also want to do your sun like this. There we go. Now I'm looking at this and I'm noticing I'm going to have to do my rays, and I'm feeling like maybe my atmosphere bubble should be a little bit lower down. So I'm going to fix that. Okay. Now you remember, one half of your drawing is going to be a healthy atmosphere and one half is going to be an unhealthy atmosphere. So I'm going to say that this side is going to be my unhealthy atmosphere. So on this side, as you know, the heat from the sun comes in and gets trapped. So I'm going to do two sun rays that come in and are trapped and stay in. And your rays can be just a line or it can be two lines like I've done here. And this is the healthy atmosphere side. So on this side, I'm going to have one of the rays come in and stay in, as heat does in a healthy atmosphere. And then I'm going to have my other ray come in and bounce out. So some of the heat comes in and some of the heat goes out in a healthy atmosphere. And then you're just going to do the rest of your sun rays. And these are not perfect because I'm going in a hurry. You can do more careful work. And your rays can be fatter or just lines, like I said. It's up to you. All right, so there we have our sun coming into the atmosphere. All right, so I'm gonna put this away And next we're going to talk about our buildings. Our buildings is the place that we're using our inspiration from James Reese. So let's pop over and look at my examples of some James Reese artwork. Here is a James Reese piece, and you notice he uses a lot of different things for inspiration in his buildings. You can see he kind of uses animals. There's a frog. You can see he uses monster-looking robot type of creates robot monster-looking buildings, and he does funny face buildings. So let's move over here. Oh, that's Norbert. Hi, Norbert. He's helping us with our art lesson today. This is another piece, James Reese piece, and you can see he has some fun, crazy windows. All right, so to review, I've put examples. Here's an animal building where it looks like a rabbit, but he had one that looked like a cat, and there was a frog too, if you go back and look. Here's one that's kind of a monster robot with some big teeth, and here's one where it's a silly face, where it's got a curly hairdo on top, some big eyes and eyelashes. So those are the inspirations, ideas that you can do for the top of the building, then, or for the building style, we'll say. So then the roofs, get crazy with the roofs. You can see here I did a lot of examples. You can just have a triangle roof, there's an arch, regular square, this one pops up, this one is a diagonal, this is steps up, arches on top of arches, two arches, different spikes. You can do all different kinds of building roofs. And the more variety you have, the more interesting your piece of art will be. All right, so yeah. Next, let's talk about the buildings themselves. And that is going to be where we look at the foreground, midground, and background. So let's look at some examples. Right, so you can see here the shortest buildings are the foreground. And then you move, you do a layer of short buildings on the bottom, and then behind them you have your midground. And those are the buildings that have the stripe triangle on the roof, and they're a little bit taller. And then you have your background, which are going to be your tallest buildings. And in this you can see they're the buildings in the very far back that have diagonal shapes on their roofs. But remember, in your piece, you want the roof, the skyline, to stay at a diagonal. So you can see here, I started with a short building and moved up to the tallest. So what I think I neglected to tell you was, up to now you should be using pencil. So you can erase it if you're not liking how it's working. And you should continue for the buildings to use pencil, the building outlines and the roofs. But after that, when you start on the windows, you're gonna wanna change to overwriter, and you're gonna wanna go back and overwrite all the things you did in pencil with your black Flair pen. All right, so now we're gonna start on, I'm gonna show you, so you should still be using your pencil, and you're gonna start on your buildings with doing your foreground first, which are gonna be small buildings. And I am not gonna do fancy roofs. Mine are gonna be very plain because I wanna do this fast. So there's my foreground. Now I wanna do my midground, which is the next level back. And remember, I'm keeping this space open. I don't wanna get any of my buildings too high. I'm working my way up a bit. And I'm doing boring roof lines. Yours are gonna be better than this, right? So there's my midground, and then last is my background, where my buildings get a little bit taller, and I've got some really odd shaped buildings here. And this is gonna be my tallest building, and then I'm gonna do shorter ones. And again, your buildings are going to be much straighter and a lot more interesting. You're gonna have some that are inspired by animals, robots, monsters, silly faces. All right, so let's get to that part. All right, so there we have our skyline. Oh, I just want to review one more time. You can see how I left space in my atmosphere, in my skyline, to create some details. And you'll see that from the top to the bottom, it's going a diagonal, right? All right, so I'm gonna erase that so when we come back, we have space to do details. So next I want to talk about the details, which will be the faces and the windows. So here are some. This is where our Zentangle technique comes in. And remember, Zentangle is a repeating shape or repeating line in a closed space. So the closed space is going to be your building. So here are some shapes, ideas that you can start out with and repeat them over and over and over again. Stars, flowers, eyes, crisscross on a building. And then different stripes could be thin, diagonal, fat, squiggly. For faces, let's remember that one side of your doodle is going to have healthy atmosphere and the other is going to have unhealthy atmosphere. So on the healthy atmosphere side, you want your animals and your creatures and your faces to be happy or cheerful. Things are good. It's healthy atmosphere, right? So you've got smiles, you've got happy eyes. On the unhealthy atmosphere side of your doodle, you want to have more of your scary and unhappy faces. So fangs, frowns, eyes that look a little freaked out, eyebrows going down. So that's where you can get creative. But remember, take one side to be the healthy and one side to be the unhealthy. And you will get started. So what I'm going to do is, this is where you change to overwriter. So what you should do is, or we'll call it a black felt tip pen. So before you start all your windows, because that's a lot of detail in pencil, you don't want to spend all the time doing it in pencil and then pen. At this point, when you have all your buildings and you have your creative rooftops, you're going to switch to your Sharpie, your felt tip pen. So you're going to go over all the buildings in your marker, you're going to go over your atmosphere in your marker, your sun and your sun's rays. So now you have everything in permanent marker, and you start your windows and Zentangles and eyes and faces. Go ahead, do that with the marker. Again, not the pencil. All right, so let's go look at lots of Zentangle examples. Here we have, you can see how I used line, squiggly lines, kind of sun rays lines, arches, and I made some windows that were filled in with all black. You can see that too. So you can fill in some of your windows. And there you see no wacky faces. Over here, we have a froggy looking face, a rabbit looking face, and you have some interesting rooftops. There's a girl with a bow in her hair. You can see a very spiky looking ceiling and a cat building. So again, these are some fun examples here. This is a more graphic looking with lots of lines and stripes and checkerboards. So we're back to your paper. You've seen how it can be done. So I'm going to do a few so you can watch. This one I'm going to do some big square windows and fill them in black. Those are kind of like eyes. And I'm going to do a face that's kind of happy and kind of sad because that one's right in the middle. For this building, I'm going to do some diagonal stripes. For this building, this is going to be my happy side over here, my healthy atmosphere. So I'm going to have some hearts, windows here. And those aren't fabulous hearts, yours will be better. This one I'm going to make a happy face, a huge smile on it. And then I'm going to put some rectangle windows. I'm going to do some regular stripes across the top here. I'm just going to have that, and then I'm going to do stripes like this. All right, so your buildings will be much better and more interesting than this. But so now take your felt tip pen and fill in and create windows, lots of repeating patterns, and fill in that whole city. Once you've done that, we're going to now move on to, and remember, pause this whenever you need to. So now would be a good time to pause and do all your Zentangle. And then when you're done, we're going to move on to our atmosphere weather details. So once you have all your windows filled in, then what we're going to do is, as you can see here, on the healthy side, we have happy trees, we have some flowers, we have normal rainfall. And then on the other side, we have lightning, representing big storms, bigger than normal. Here's tornadoes. We have tsunamis with our big waves. And notice our buildings are not happy. So let's go take a look at some examples. Here I've sketched out just real quick sketches of climate details that you want to put in your sky area of your doodle. You have your healthy atmosphere, trees, flowers, bugs, birds, rainbows, rain, clouds. And then your unhappy side is where you have big weather events that are not normal. Tornadoes, tsunamis, wind, floods. I put some flames there, rain. You have a tree towards the bottom, an umbrella blowing in the wind. Anything, you don't have to use these. You can use whatever you want, just as long as one side shows unhealthy atmosphere and the other side shows happy atmosphere. And then down here in the bottom of this, your sky colors on your healthy side, I'm saying you can choose green, blue, orange, pink. And on your unhealthy side, I'd like you to stick with either gray, and you can get the gray by using the black color pencil very lightly, or maybe a purple and using that very lightly. So you have color representing a healthy atmosphere and an unhealthy atmosphere, in addition to all the different details. Okay, so you've seen samples. So back to actually your actual drawing. You should be using your black marker right now. And so we were talking about climate details. Of course, your buildings will be filled in completely with Zentangle. So let's say this is my unhealthy side. You can see the sun, the heat is coming in and staying in. So on this side, I'm gonna do a tornado that starts small, starts large at the top and gets smaller. I'm gonna do some big waves too. And again, yours will look much better than mine. And on this side, the healthy side, I'm gonna have flowers, maybe one flower there, some trees, and then I wanna have a cloud with some rain. And you could do some lightning over here. So now I've got all my details that I want, and then I'm gonna put in color. So on the unhealthy side, I'm gonna use a black color pencil, and I'm gonna just lightly shade it in. And on the healthy side, I'm gonna use blue sky pencil and just shade it in all around the details. And then for the sun, I'm gonna use yellow, or you could use red or orange. Let's review, I've seen it a lot now, our final product, where you can see how we have blue on the healthy side and gray on the unhealthy side. And that is our climate change doodle, which is, I can't wait to see yours.